Hi. This is a quick run-through of the steps proposed for facilitating the sessions for the new working groups. Let us start with a breakdown of the reference materials put together for the sessions. There are 7 main materials or resources grouped into 6 categories. The first 2 reference materials provides a summary of all the proposed steps for facilitating the working group sessions. The first resource summarizes the steps using a diagram, and the second uses a table format to present more details on the process. The third resource has the glossary, which is provided to ensure the team understands key acronyms relevant to the project and terms commonly used in implementation work. The fourth resource is an implementation framework called the Consolidated Framework for Implementation Research, or simply, the CFIR. The resource highlights 5 domains to consider during the facilitation process. The fifth resource presents the objectives, recommendations, and determinants relevant to each working group. The breakdown of the recommendations and the suggested sequence they should follow is captured in the sixth resource. The seventh and last resource is a template to guide the team in generating a logic model as appropriate. To recap, there are 7 main resources or reference materials designed for the facilitation process. These include the breakdown of steps for all sessions, a glossary, an implementation framework, objectives and recommendations assigned to the working groups, the sequence recommendations should follow, and lastly a logic model template. Next, we would look at the proposed facilitation steps or process. There are 10 steps in total. The first step is to review the provided glossary where key terms, concepts, and acronyms are spelt out. Once the team familiarizes themselves with the glossary, the next step is to review recommendations assigned to the group. This, in step 3, is then followed by reviewing the sequence proposed for how the recommendations should progress. The proposed sequences were extracted from recommendations from Stage 1 and the early phase of Stage 2, as shown here. These were broken down into their constituent parts, hence, resulting in different actions labeled as Action 1, 2, 3, and so on. Reorganizing these actions based on similarities resulted in what is referred to here as the activity flow and the condition or conditions that should be considered. Here is an example from the Resources Working Group. You can see the conditions to take account of on the top row and the activity flow 1 and 2 below. Activity 1 suggests that the process should start first with identifying resources and then proceed to updating the list of identified resources before providing individuals with information on the resources and finally enabling them to access or utilize them. The conditions to be mindful of are for the last 2 items. The first column says ensure the resource information you provide is within accessible distance and up to date. The second requires supporting or advocating on behalf of relevant individuals to access or utilize required resources. The outcome of steps 2 and 3 is a sequence flow that members agree is logical. Actions are picked in step 4 in the order they occur in the agreed sequence. For each action, the team work together to brainstorm how they can be achieved. This results in a list of potential solutions or interventions. The interventions are further examined in step 5 and reduced using agreed criteria such as feasibility and impact. In step 6, interventions retained in step 5 are picked one after the other and examined to identify things to consider to successfully put them into practice. The CFIR can be useful here in ensuring all relevant domains are considered. What about the intervention should be considered? What factors in the inner and outer setting may hinder or enable implementing the intervention? Is there anything about the individuals who will implement the intervention, or those who are the target audience for the intervention that should be considered? What process factors should we be mindful of? Step 6 helps to identify implementation barriers and facilitators. The barriers and facilitators are examined in step 7 and strategies on how to address or leverage them are generated. The team can be presented a list of commonly adopted implementation strategies from the literature to choose from. Here is a screenshot from a list of 73 strategies. The reference to access the full list is written below here. On completion of Step 7, there may be the need to reduce generated or selected implementation strategies. The task of reducing the list is done in Step 8 using appropriate methods. The retained strategies in Step 8 and the interventions retained in Step 5 are put together and organized in the order they should be implemented in Step 9. Step 10 is the final step and it involves generating a logic model. To conduct this step, it is advisable to start with the activities and processes before proceeding to identify the output and outcome they should generate, and finally to determining the inputs they require. For example, what resource materials are needed, funds, personnel, and so on. Step 10 marks the end of the facilitation process and the end of this quick breakdown. Thanks for listening.